Tell us who you are and what we're doing here today.
Hi, well, good morning. I'm Larry McFarland, and I'm one of the volunteers here at Castle Air Museum. And I'm going to give you a tour of our VC-9 presidential aircraft. And I have a little bit of connection to that aircraft in my history. But so we're going to go inside, take a detailed look at everything in there.
How old is this?
Well, that airplane was ordered in 1973, built in 74, and delivered in 1975.
And who flew in this?
Well, Nancy Reagan has the most flying time on it. So it's kind of known as her airplane, but President Reagan flew once in it, once or twice, and then President Bush and President Carter. So.
Wow. Okay, let's go see.
Okay, here we are on board, and the first thing I want to show you is the flight deck. And so this, I'd like to point out, is like 1970s technology compared to today, where everything, so the instruments, you can see most are round. We call those round dials. And it's dated, but there's about 50 different instruments up there for the pilots to keep track of during flight. All the aircraft systems are on the overhead panel. The fuel, hydraulics, pneumatics, electric is all controlled from that overhead panel. 2 pilots, and it's a pretty responsible position, especially when you consider that you've got the president or the vice president, the first lady, even senators, congressmen, so it's quite a responsibility to sit in one of those 2 seats.
So what's your connection to this plane?
Well, I interviewed for a job at the 89th Airlift Wing back when this was a brand new airplane. And I didn't get the job because I was in Strategic Air Command. It was in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And so, it was, I had the honor to go to Andrews. Henry Kissinger's pilot was my escort for a couple of days. And so this airplane was brand new then. In fact, I didn't even get to go on this airplane, but I did get a tour of Air Force One. I got souvenirs off Air Force One.
Wow, that's so cool. Now you ended up with the plane. Okay, I want to see what the rest looks like.
Okay, well, starting right here, the 2 seats right here will be occupied by security police.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like sectioned off.
If the depending on who's flying on the airplane, it could be either security police at Andrews, or if the president was on board, it'd be Secret Service that occupy these 2 seats. So they're kind of the door guard. They control who gets on and gets off through this front door. The position right here is a pretty important position. And so in the very beginning, this airplane was intended basically for the First Lady, congressmen, and senators. But then, as the 70s progressed into the 80s and everything, flying became more and more an everyday thing. And so then you go like, well, we've got this airplane that can get into smaller airports, because at that time, the president was flying on the 707, which needed 10,000-foot runway.
Oh, wow.
This airplane can use a 5,000-foot runway. So this opened it up so that the president could now go to smaller communities rather than just having to deal with Chicago or Denver or Los Angeles, San Francisco, that sort of thing. So when it became available then that decided that the president could fly on it, then we had to have communications to support the president, because when he's on the airplane, he has to have the same ability to contact world leaders or congressmen, whatever, while he's in the air. So this compartment was then added so that the president could fly on the aircraft. The gentleman who sat here, if the president was on board and we were airborne, he was glued to that seat. And right behind you is the forward lavatory. So if you flew with the president, you watch what you ate and drank before that mission.
Oh, wow, this is really spacious. And this is where you can actually conduct a meeting, right?
Okay, this is the executive section of the aircraft. And this is the biggest, the best seat in the house right here. It swivels, it reclines. You can see it's a pretty good sized seat. So if you had the authority to, excuse me, request the use of the airplane, that would be your seat.
Wow.
Nancy Reagan has the most flying time. She was a very petite lady. The footstool down here was put on board anytime Nancy Reagan was going to be flying on the airplane.
Wow.
A quick trip around the table. There are 4 cup holders. They're gold. They don't come out. We have a letter from Nancy Reagan. We invited her numerous times, but she was unable to come. But she did send a letter. Here's a picture going back into the 70s when the airplane was new.
Wow.
And you can see it had some pretty wild colors. In the 70s, you know, we had carpet that was shag, it was orange, it was yellow, it was black, it was green and everything. And so, and you can see, I say that the table is kind of one step above a card table. But now you see blue and gray leather seats throughout the airplane. And it was Hillary Clinton that said that that was not presidential. And so now we have the blue and the gray leather. The airplane has secure phones, connects up to the secure phone for the communication specialist. And so if the president wants to talk to another world leader or to his wife, whatever, pick up that phone. That gentleman makes it happen up there. Continuing on around, the Airphone was introduced by the airlines years ago. Pull that out, swipe your credit card. It used to be $10 a minute to call home on one of those.
Wow.
If you sat there, your picture would be here. There were around 100 people that had authority to fly on these 3 airplanes.
Oh, wow.
So there was a cabinet behind the couch that had their pictures. So if you were sitting in that chair, your picture would be up there. The clock tells you the time where you left and where you're going. Over here, we have a television set. This came about after 9/11. So originally, every aircraft at the 89th Airlift Wing had a bar. And if you sat in that seat, you told them what to stock your bar with. Mm-hmm. So this was the aircraft bar. After 9/11, President Bush disappeared for 5.5 hours. We hadn't heard from him. You know, and so after everything settled down, President Bush says, I'd never want another president or the people to go through what we went through at 9/11. So then he ordered that every airplane in the fleet would have a television because we now have worldwide TV,
wow,
and international TV.
And does this pull out to a bed?
This makes into a bed. The pictures there show some of the people that we know that have flown on this airplane, but it's obviously not every single one. But you can see presidents there. And so, yes, they flew on the airplane, but most of them, they were not commander-in-chief when they flew on the airplane.
Do you know the furthest that this has traveled? The furthest distance?
It has been to Moscow, and it has been pretty much to every continent and numerous times in Europe. So, yeah, it's pictures on the table here, just various pictures of things. 2 pictures that I like to point out, if I can. This President Kennedy, this picture dates back to 1962, and behind him is the Air Force One, the 707, and you can see back in those days it was painted quite different than what they are now. It had international orange on the nose, the tail, and the wingtips because we didn't have the instrumentation that we have now. So this helped the pilot to see another aircraft in the air. The picture right here, it was taken in Fresno. This is the airplane that you're standing on.
Oh, wow.
And he came over to take part in the San Luis Reservoir. Groundbreaking.
So was the Queen ever on here? I see a picture of the Queen.
Yes, Queen Elizabeth II has been on the airplane.
Wow, that is super cool.
And we recently found out more about that. You know, so it's had some very famous people on board. This is the main cabin of the airplane, and so the people that you would find here would be aides to the VIPs up there. You would have the press corps, invited guests, that sort of thing back here. So it's kind of interesting. There's like 42 seats on board the airplane. And it really doesn't matter whether you're this airplane or the 707 or the 747. It's a number in the 40s, 42 to 46 seats that are on those airplanes.
Wow.
So even though you see the 747 and go, wow, there's a whole bunch of people on it, no.
I'm surprised there's even this many seats on Air Force One.
This was very unique. And right here, you can kind of see all first class seats. It's a 2 and 2 configuration. The tray tables are in the armrest, and so it's set up so that if this person next to the window needs to get out, this person doesn't have to put away their stuff and stand up and move into the aisle.
That would be very convenient when going to Moscow. And then the cabin space is basically the same as a traditional plane.
Yes.
And just like the lavatory. They're all that's not really super special features.
Nothing special about that. A couple of features here. These 2 seats were reserved for air police, and from Andrews Air Force Base, they would fly with the aircraft. So they had these 2 seats reserved. There's a drawer that pulls out down here so that they weren't sitting back here in uniform with their M16s. So if the airplane had to spend the night somewhere, they spent the night with the airplane.
Oh, wow.
So they had this special little area here. Behind you here, this is the China cabinet, and it would hold 50 place settings of China. So the president has China, the vice president has China, the first lady has China, and then there's China for everybody else. So you can see whenever this airplane, luckily there's 3 of them, they didn't fly every day, but there was quite a bit of work involved to exchange the China and the crystal.
And then what were they, how were they cooking it? How are they keeping the food warm? I see that there's actually like French fries and stuff.
It's interesting, we show some pictures here. Basically the pictures you see there were never served on this airplane.
Okay, we can't have like really hot food for the most part.
They had hot food, but here's the way it works with the presidential fleet. The food that you're served on an airplane is really cooked in the in-flight kitchen, and it's put on board the airplane, and all they have to do really then is make it hot again.
Right. So how were they doing that? That was kind of before microwaves, right? I don't know.
We have a microwave, so it's an interesting kitchen. We have the world's largest microwave right up here. We've got 2 thermos containers for coffee. We've got 2 coffee makers there. We have a convection oven.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is where
where the food would be warmed up. So there are 6 shelves there. We've got a refrigerator down here. Here's our stainless steel dishwasher. And then what you don't find on a civilian airplane is like silverware drawers. Something special about this airplane, this is where the crystal stemware would be stored. So the Galley basically starts off with clean dishes, and when it lands, the crew does the dishes before the passengers get back on again, and so it either has clean dishes, dirty dishes become clean again, and that sort of thing. The other interesting thing, the 2 lavatories for all of the people back here are right there. And so it makes it kind of interesting to be one of the people working in the Galley. There were 3 stewards in the Galley. In the beginning, they were all men. They did not wear Air Force uniforms. They had civilian jackets, slacks, and they had a name tag with their first name, and they wore no rank insignia. So they said that makes it very interesting or helpful, because you don't have people going, hey, Lieutenant, bring me a cup of coffee type thing. So everything was kept very calm. So it did pose a problem though, because you can see if I'm a steward and I'm serving food and I've got a tray
to go to the bathroom, you have to
and you can see the aisle's not very wide, so and the ceiling's not real tall, but so it was a challenge, but then again, it's such an honor to have a job to work on a crew that flies the president or the vice president, the first lady, our government leaders. not everybody gets to do that.
Okay, so if the Queen is on board with the president, where's the rank in like who sits where? Is there like a rank in order of operations? Or is just the president's always the highest ranking on this plane?
Right. But,
okay.
Yeah, but that would be all determined before they get on.
So if the Queen's tired, she might not get the bed. Or whatever.
Well, this airplane really, it's not transcontinental. Really, its best, is about halfway across the country.
It'd be a small time, yeah.
Right. from Washington, to get to Salt Lake or Denver or Albuquerque, Dallas, Miami, or something like that. It could go further, but that would be the most economical, best way to do it. If you're going to go the long distance, then get on the bigger airplane.
So how long has this been here at Castle Air Museum?
It's been here 11 years now.
And you were here when it first arrived?
Yes.
How exciting was that?
Well, to get an airplane like this, and you can go on the internet and you can see there's a video of it, flying in overhead and landing, and then the ceremony that was held on the flight line. And so it's, it's an honor to be able to show this airplane to the public, because you only guess what the inside of the president's airplane looks like. And so it's an honor to be able to show it to people.
Well, at what point does it retire? Where they're like, we have to retire this and get a new one? What's the protocol in that?
Typically, well, the 747 that the president flies on right now is 33 years old. So this airplane flew for 30 years. So kind of 30 years is kind of the magic number. The new Air Force One is, being built. But again, once the airplane is built and finished, then the crew flies it for about a year before the president sets foot on it, because you have to, the crew has to be almost like part of the airplane. So when you get a new airplane, there's a lot of changes, a lot of things that you have to do differently. And, before the president gets on, you want to make sure the crew can handle anything that might happen. Okay, the airborne communications specialist here is also one of the requirements is if the president is on board, he cannot leave this seat. And that's kind of interesting, because here's the forward lavatory. And so if we're airborne and the president is on board the airplane, he's glued to that seat.
He can't go to the bathroom?
No.
Wow.
And so talking about that, I like to show people the executive washroom on board Air Force One. And so I'll let you have a sneak peek at the executive washroom here.
Ooh.
No linen towels, no gold faucets.
They have the fine china, but not the...
Nothing special here, okay? Okay, another very helpful feature of this airplane was one of two airplanes that were made in the United States. The DC-9 and the Boeing 727 had the aft air stairs. So that was a unique feature for those two airplanes. So if you were seated in the back of the airplane, you would board and deplane through the aft air stairs.
Oh, you're not going to go down the same...
You're not going to go through the executive section unless you're seated in the executive section.
Okay.
Okay?
Private entrances.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just want to point out another really significant feature of the airplane is any airplane that's registered to fly in the United States has an American flag on it somewhere. Usually that American flag is going to be about this big. But step back and take a look at the tail of the airplane and the American flag.
Wow.
It is huge. So when you combine that with the paint scheme of the airplane, the big American flag, when it lands somewhere, people are going to say, wonder who that is. The tail number is significant on this airplane. There were 3 airplanes, and just using there were 31681, 82, and 83.
Wow.
So when Nancy Reagan went out to the airport, she had her choice between 3 airplanes. She chose this one. So one of the questions that I always longed to have Nancy Reagan right here and ask her, why did you choose this tail number? And I never got to do that. so I have to kind of guess. But when I look at the tail number, that's 31681, first off, 81 is the year 1981 that President Reagan became president and stepped into the Oval Office. 316, I refer to John 3:16 in the Bible because Nancy Reagan was a very religious person. So I would have given anything to be able to ask her those two questions. So I'm guessing, you know, but that's my best guess.
I love those guesses. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. And be sure and send more people to tour our airplane and come back and see us again.